Matt, did you online today? Great. How do I make?
Number 7 minutes. That's right, November, there we go. Why not?
How are we doing, Greg? Should I kick this off?
You do have a form.
Okay. We call this November 4th, 2021 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee to order. It is 2:32 p.m. Greg, will you do the roll call?
Sure. Mr. Coy?
Here.
Mr. Lindemuth?
Present.
Mr. Van Hove?
Present.
Mr. Rowland? Here. Ms. Heil?
Here.
Mr. Stitchick?
Present via Teams.
Ms. Kilcoyne? Mr. Colhayes is excused. Ms. McNulty?
Here.
Ms. Acton?
Here.
And Mr. Rebuffo?
Okay, we do have a quorum. I was worried there for a second, about 5 minutes ago. So thank you everyone for being here. Craig, will you please do the public involvement announcement?
Yes, all AMATS meetings are open to the public. We'll have a presentation first by staff or the consultants on business items, and then after that, the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and then we will open it up to the public for comments before it comes back to the committee for discussion and final approval.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Craig. Next item is approving the agenda. Do we have a motion for approving the agenda?
I moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Van Hove, seconded by Ms. Melchi. Do we have any changes? Okay, are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, agenda is approved. We also, moving on to the next item, we do have the minutes to look at. Do we have a motion for approving the October 14, 2021 minutes?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Nolte, approved, or seconded by Mr. Van Hove. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, it looks like the October 14, 2021 minutes are approved. Moving right along, let's go to action items. Action item 5A, MTP draft technical report number 1, goals and objectives. The action item does say performance measures and targets memo. Is this one that you'll be presenting, Craig, or?
Aaron Younganaylan will present.
Take it away, Aaron.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Younganaylan. I am Senior Transportation Planner with AMATS, and I'm the project manager for the 2050 MTP update. So I do want to just quickly address what Mr. Coy mentioned. Yes, there's an error on the agenda. It does say goals and objectives, performance measures, and targets. But we had a recent change to our schedule to allow a 30-day public comment period for the goals and objectives instead of the 15-day. And so that kind of pushed our performance measures and targets out. Don't worry, our schedule is still fine, because what we've done is we've combined the performance measures and targets with the criteria. Expect to see those in February for release for public comment. I'll get into a little more detail on what that entails when we get to next steps to give you guys an idea of what to look forward to. Okay. So first I want to do introductions. I actually haven't had a chance to do this yet, but first I want to do a quick introduction of who our project team members are. So on the project team is AMAT staff, so it's myself, Craig, Joni, John Cecil, and Christine Schutte. And then we also are joined by Bart Rudolph with the Public Transportation Department and James Starzik with DOT and PF. So thank you all for your contribution to the project team. I really appreciate it. Next, I'd like to introduce the consultants. As you know, R&M is our consultant for this project, but I haven't actually had a chance to introduce them yet. So Juan, are you online?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Juan, who you are and who other members of the consultant team are.
All right, great. Thanks, Aaron, and thanks for having us. And I think I've worked with almost everyone at AMATS in the city, but for everyone else who doesn't know me, I'm Juan Lee. I've been a planner in Anchorage for almost 20 years. Used to be with the city, with AMATS actually. And we are the lead consultant team supporting AMAT's project team that Aaron mentioned earlier on this 2050 MTP for Anchorage and Chugach Way. I have Ben Coleman with me. He's one of our technical transportation planners at R&M, and then I'll let Ben say a few words, and then I'll introduce the rest of our consultant team.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Coleman. So yeah, I've been doing transportation planning for a little bit, 2 years at the Matsu Borough, and then now going on 2 years with R&M.
Awesome, thanks Ben. So the other partners we have who aren't online today, but I just want to give a shout out to RSG, who are leading the model development for the MTP. We also have McKinley Research Group. They are working on the socioeconomic projections and updates for the community profile for the MTP. We've got Burgess and Nipel. They are safety planning experts. We've also got Jacobs, our local Jacobs office, helping us with some planning, transportation planning, performance measures.
Okay, thank you. Juan, can you go ahead and share your screen and show the project website really quick?
Yes, awesome. Do I need control, Christine, or can I just share?
Just share.
Okay. All right. Can you see it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So this is the AMATS 2050 MTP project website. We've been developing this for the last couple months with the AMATS project team. So this is going to be the clearinghouse where we want everyone to come and find out what the MTP update is, the 2050, what it entails, a little 101 on why it's being done, the federal regulations that are required, and the schedule, which is really key to this update. So we've updated it recently, and one of the reasons I'm showing is that there's still a little IT request that's in for anyone with a muni.org address or muni address. Is you can't access this right now, but it is open to the public, and the search engine optimization has been turned on, so you can just Google AMATS 2050 and this should pop up. So at the top here, we've got this amazing photo of Anchorage, but we also want to make sure that everyone knows that Chugach Way is included in the MTP as it's part of the AMATS boundary. And so we have several documents that have been updated under documents and resources at the top. So just a little tour for you. Ways to participate. We have the public involvement plan on here, the schedule, which has been updated, and a detailed schedule down here so you can follow along. Some of these dates will change. I just want to throw that caveat out there, but this is to the best of our knowledge of what the schedule is. It may flex a little bit, but we are working on it daily to keep it updated for you. There's a couple documents also. The guiding principles is on here, the public involvement plan, as well as what you're reviewing today, the TAC's review version of the draft goals and objectives. And with that, I will turn it back to Aaron.
Thank you. Okay, so really quickly, I do also want to point out, we have sent out notifications to everyone regarding the goals and objectives currently available for people to start reviewing them as they are on the TAC agenda, and they'll be on the policy committee agenda, and trying to get people to start reviewing them now and get ready for the public comment period we hope to have in December. So, okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I do have a presentation today, so just a heads up to the committee members if you want to, it'll be behind you. I will be efficient with your time, so if I'm going too fast, please let me know to slow down. Okay, so we've already done introductions, so everyone's seen that, thankfully. So overview of what we're going to do today. So quickly, we're going to review what went into the refinement of the goals and objectives for the 2050 MTP. Then we're going to actually go through the goals and objectives changes themselves. So we'll go line by line in the table that was attached to the tech memo. And then I'll talk about next steps. Oops. First thing is the table. So this big here, I'm holding up the table that's in tech memo for the goals and objectives. You'll find it at the back. The version that's with the tech memo printed off is a little small, so I recommend you grab the bigger version if you want to see it in person. So really quickly, the first column on the left is the 2040 goals and objectives, so we can use it as a comparison of where we started. The next one is public comments. Those are the comments that we received during the 2040 MTP update that we were unable to address with that update, and so we brought them forward to this one. So it's kind of our starting point of edits to the goals and objectives. Next are plan conformance. So we looked at various plans to see how the goals and objectives, if they conformed or if they conflicted with them. The plans that we looked at are the 2020 comp plan, the 2040 land use plan, the MOA climate action plan, the Chugach Eagle River comprehensive plan, the AMATS Spinar corridor plan that was recently adopted, the transit on the move plan, and then the AMATS non-motorized plan. So all of those help to inform our goals and objectives edits. Next, we also did a FAST Act, as we do have federal requirements that we need to meet or ensure that we're incorporating into our planning process. So we wanted to say, okay, how are we doing with conforming to the federal planning factors and national goals? And then the last column are the actual recommendations for the 2050 MTP goals and objectives. So this is the table that I'm going to be going through line by line. So I recommend pull it up and kind of hopefully can follow along as I talk about it. I'll be referencing this a lot because some of the goals for the 2050 MTP have the same numbering as the 2040, but some of them are different. So I'm going to have to go back and forth and reference it and try and keep everyone up to speed. Next, I did want to just do a quick reminder of what the vision statement is for the 2050 MTP. Anchorage and Chugach Eagle River are vibrant winter communities with an adaptable and efficient multimodal transportation network that is equitable, safe, accessible, and reliable, which supports a sustainable economy, enhances and protects the natural and built environment, and fosters healthy, connected neighborhoods. It's important to kind of keep this in mind as we're going forward with this project, what the vision statement is for the plan, because this feeds into everything that we're going to be working on, goals and objectives onward. Okay, before we get started, any questions or comments? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is start with goal number 1. So my plan for these is to just read what the goal is, if it changed, how it changed, and then start going into each of the objectives. So goal 1 is preserve the existing system. As you can see, the goal has remained unchanged between the 2040 and the 2050 MTP. After reviewing public comments, which we did not get any on this particular goal, and reviewing the associated plans and the performance or the FAST Act conformance, we felt that the goal in its current state meted all of our needs. So moving on to objective 1A, it is only one objective, and it is tweaked a little from the 2040. So the 2040 is maintain and rehabilitate the existing transportation system to achieve and maintain a state of good repair for all modes. So the 2050 is the same thing, but we're adding year-round to it to focus on maintenance for all seasons. This comes because some of our recently adopted plans talks about that when we're doing things like preservation, that we're thinking about all seasons in our approach. So we just wanted to update our objective to reflect that. Any questions or comments? Okay. Goal 2. Goal 2 is improve safety. So we refined this goal to be a lot more direct than it was in the past. The 2040 goal was increase safety and security of the transportation network. We had a lot of questions about kind of what we meant by that. So we decided to add in a little more information that kind of gave people a better understanding of what our overarching goal is for improved safety. So the new goal is improve safety and security, provide safer and more secure places to live, walk, bike, ride the bus, and drive. So it's kind of calling out those different travel mode options that people utilize for our transportation system. Any questions on that? Okay. Goal 2 or objective 2A. So the 2040 goal or objective 2A is relatively similar to the one that we're recommending for the 2050. However, we've tweaked the language a little to add in motorcycles and commercial vehicles as they were missing from the original 2A. So the new 2050 goal or objective 2A reads, reduce the number and severity of vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle, motorcycle, and commercial vehicle crashes and fatalities. Any questions on that one? Yes, Todd.
I see that you took out the serious injuries portion of that.
That's covered under severity.
Okay.
Because it's when we think about it, it's not just helping to reduce serious injuries and fatalities. It's also the other accidents that happen throughout that aren't necessarily considered part of the serious injuries and fatalities. They have an importance that we need to think about in our process as well. Okay, next one, 2B. So the 2040 2B was decrease emergency response time. The new 2050 2B is reduce barriers to timely emergency response. So we made a modification in this one because we wanted to be a little more inclusive in what we meant by this. You know, when people are like, well, what do you mean by decrease emergency response time? That can include a variety of things, but it was kind of specific in its approach. So we wanted to make it a little more broad and add it to be reduce barriers to timely emergency response. So this can cover things like what was asked for in the public comment, secondary access routes or emergency access routes, as long as a host of other things that we can do. It's something we think about in our development of the transportation process. So we felt it was a little more inclusive as in the version we have for the 2050 MTP. Any questions on that one? Okay, next one. Okay, so this was 2C under the 2040 MTP, and it was reduce vulnerability and increase resiliency of the transportation infrastructure from natural hazards and disasters. We removed it from goal 2 because we felt it was better addressed by our new goals 5 and 6. So I can talk about those when we get under to goal 5 and 6. Any questions on that one? Okay, next one is 2C. This was the old 2D from the 2040, and that read minimize conflicts between freight and other motorized and non-motorized travelers. So our new one for the 2050 has been tweaked a little to cover all modes of travel and to be a little more specific in what we're trying to address and to be more measurable. So our new one is minimize conflicts between different modes of travel, so that all inclusive of all modes, reduce unsafe behaviors, and increase attentiveness and awareness. We're trying to be a little more direct in what we want to do, and we feel that this helps us with that. Any questions on that? Okay.
I have a question before you move on.
Yes.
The FAST Act conformance mentions two different items. Safety is one and security is the other, but doesn't really give too much detail. Could you speak to the security and what it is referring to by that?
I'll try my best, and if any member of the project team wants to speak up, please do so as well. When we originally looked at that as part of the 2040 MTP, we thought it meant really resiliency of the transportation. So, you know, how secure can the transportation system be against resiliency, or, you know, climate change or natural disasters? But that's really resiliency on its own. So security is more about, we think, when people use the transportation system, how secure do they feel in using it? So somebody walking down a pathway, do they feel secure using it? So is there enough lighting or other things like that? Or somebody driving their car? We felt that's addressed through our recommended objectives here, because we're talking about minimizing conflicts, reducing unsafe behaviors and awareness, so that helps with that security, that feeling of safeness as people are utilizing the transportation system. Reducing barriers to timely engagement, so people can feel safe and secure in the knowledge that, you know, emergency services can get to them in a timely manner, as well as reducing the number and severity of crashes. We tried to shift away from this idea of always having to call everything out directly and make sure that we have it addressed in every single objective, and realize that some things can be addressed in multiple ways.
Okay.
Are there any questions online so far, Christine? Okay. So I'll check every once in a while, just want to make sure we don't skip it. Okay, so that is it for safety. Next, we'll move on to goal 3. So just a heads up, goal 3 had a lot of changes to it. So this is going to be a lengthy discussion. So first thing is we actually did modify the goal. One of the reasons we modified this is to be more supportive of our vision statement, what I just kind of read to you. So the old goal 3 was improve travel conditions. It said develop an efficient multimodal transportation system to reduce congestion, promote accessibility, and improve system reliability. So our new goal 3 is improve mobility options. We wanted to give it a different name because we thought that improved mobility options more encompasses of what we're trying to accomplish both with the MTP and with this goal. And the goal is support an efficient, reliable, and connected transportation system that allows people to succeed by equitably improving access and mobility to all activities. So the refinement for this goal, I think, is much more inclusive, much more comprehensive of everything that we're trying to accomplish with our MTP. So it accounts for things like equity, accessibility for everyone, regardless of what activity that they are trying to do by using the transportation system. So, and you know, looking at other MPOs, they have similar encompassing types of goals like this. And so we felt that it was an appropriate one to make changes to. Before I move on, yes, questions on this goal?
Yeah, I'm curious about the allows people to succeed. Is that one from other examples that you saw? Or could you speak to that just a little bit?
I think that came through us. I don't know if any member of the project team wants to speak on this, about this succeeding, allowing people to succeed or not. Okay. So
this is Bart. I can talk to it a little bit.
Thanks, Bart. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was finding my mute button. It really comes from this idea of access to opportunity and tying in a little bit of economic prosperity, that if people have the options to get to where they need to go, they can succeed in however they feel they need to, whether it's in a job or education or anything that we would use the transportation network for. So it's kind of another way of saying access to opportunity.
So it's trying to help us realize that transportation isn't just a means of its own, but it's actually helping the public and others to have a life benefit, basically.
Yes. And it does tie in with one of our later goals with equity. So, and I can speak to that when we get to that goal, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Awesome. Okay, objective 3A. So objective 3A from the 2040 MTP was decreased travel time. So we actually had some comments from the public as well as, does this conform with our plans? And when you have something like decreased travel time, it brings up kind of inherent conflicts with other goals and objectives that we have within our system. Because when you talk about decreasing travel time, well, what do you mean? Are you talking about the car? Or are you talking about other modes of travel? And we felt that what it was trying to achieve is better covered under other objectives that we have later on that kind of defined what this meant a little more. So the terms decreased travel time, we're recommending removing as an objective and using the idea behind it and intersperse it with our other objectives. Any questions on that one? Just so you know, other things that it helps with, like efficiency of the transportation system, that helps to cover decreased travel time, and we do talk about that later. So, okay, next one, 3B was the old one, and it was improve as necessary expressway, arterial, and collector roads and intersections to safely and efficiently handle projected traffic. So we decided to go ahead and remove this one as well, because this is covered under the safety aspect of it and under the efficiency side of, it's covered under the safety goal 2 And it's also covered under other objectives as part of goal 3, dealing with efficiency of the transportation system. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next one, 3C of the 2040. This was establish an adequate number of access points from subdivisions to higher order streets, to adjacent higher order streets, apologize. So when we looked at this, this one was a hard one to kind of quantify how AMATs can directly impact this as written. It was a carryover from the 2040 and I think even from the 2035 before that. So we took a hard look at it and said, is this something that we really want to have as an objective, or is this better covered under things like integrating the transportation with land use? Making sure that transportation systems are designed with the context in mind about what the land use is in the area. So we felt that this was better covered under other objectives in goal 3. Any questions on that one? Yes, sir.
Okay, now DOT. So it's 3C under 2040 was removed, or it's just hard? What do you want me to do?
It was removed.
Okay.
Because it's hard for us to be able to affect as AMATs.
Just didn't have an action word in front of us.
Yeah, sorry. I'll change that for future presentations. I'll try to. Okay, so moving on, we have 3A. So of the 2050 MTP, which was 3D of the 2040 MTP. So this one is improve the existing transportation system efficiency through the implementation of effective and innovative transportation system management, TSM, transportation demand management, TDM, and intelligent transportation system, ITS strategies. We're recommending no change for this one, as it is consistent with local and federal goals, and we didn't receive any public comments saying you need to change it. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next one, 3B of the 2050 was 3E of the 2040. So the old one was promote bicycle, pedestrian, and transit use. So when we looked at this one, it was another one that we're like, okay, what do we mean here? In addition, we wanted to separate out the transit side of things and have its own objective, which is 3G, the new objective 3G, to give the transit side of things a little more punch, to have its own kind of objective and more meaningful than just lump it in with something else. And so we really want to focus this objective, 3B, on non-motorized travel. So this is provide transportation facilities to encourage and accommodate pedestrian and bicycle travel. So we feel this gets to that point of, it is a little bit of a shift, as was pointed out to me, that it's less about, you know, things like education or encouragement, engagement opportunities, saying, okay, here, how can we get people out, and more focused on the engineering side of things. Because we felt that that was a more meaningful impact on our goals and objectives, to have it focused on that portion of the transportation. Any questions on that one?
There's a chat if you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, if you can read it, I won't be able to.
Sure. It's from Nancy.
Oh, wait, is it? We don't do it now. We don't do public comments in the middle of this, do we? I don't want to get out of line with that.
I think we should go through the whole PowerPoint and then we can come back to the comments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then that's what we'll do. Okay. Next one, 3C, which was old 3F. So the old one was improve accessibility to major education, recreation, employment, commercial, healthcare, and other public facilities. So this one, we decided to go ahead and change to implement transportation facilities that are appropriate for the intended adjacent land use. So this one was a pretty big shift for us, because we decided to, one, get out all of these specifics that we're calling here about what kind of land use we want to help, and recognize that we want to help access all land uses where possible. And also recognize that when we're looking at transportation facilities, we need to be very mindful of what kind of land use is there now, and also what is anticipated in the future. so that we're not putting transportation facilities in place that conflict with the land uses. It's a way to be more mindful in our transportation and land use integration. People often ask, how do you integrate them? This is exactly how you do it. It's context design of your transportation system.
And Erin, it's Juan. If I can add that this really gets to the street typology where the transportation facility matches what the adjacent land use is, whether it's a park, a school, a major destination such as a grocery store. But yeah, the street typology, this is where it really comes together.
Thank you. Okay, any questions on that one? Okay, next one is 3D, which was old 2040 3G. Enhanced physical connectivity between neighborhoods by increasing the number of roadway, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit connections. So we decided to refine this one to enhance the connectivity of the existing street network, minimizing barriers and disconnections of the existing roadways, and improving multimodal access to activity centers. So with this one, we wanted to make sure that it was more inclusive, not really more inclusive, but covered more. Because the old one was pretty specific on what it was wanting to do. This one, please be aware that when we talk about enhancing connectivity of the street network and roadways, we're not specifically talking about just cars or single occupancy vehicles. It's anyone or anything utilizing our transportation network. So that could include non-motorized facilities. It could include transit-specific facilities, anything like that. So be aware that it is not a focus on single occupancy vehicle for this one. And we really wanted to bring in this idea that, as we've kind of stated before, is our transportation system is not just really focused on people use the transportation system to go somewhere and do something. And so when we talk about activity centers, that's all inclusive of education opportunities, recreation opportunities, employment opportunities, shopping, all that kind of stuff. It helps, again, with that integration of transportation and land use. Any questions? Yes.
So I didn't catch the multimodal part of the street and did have a question on that.
Yes.
And I'm sure others, as they read it, are going to probably ask the same question. So one idea I just had as I read through it was, did you say multimodal at the end? What if multimodal, instead of being at the end of this goal, is move forward, where you say enhance the multimodal connectivity, and then that's where you say multimodal, because then it applies to the whole statement a little bit more clearly.
That's a good idea. I don't see any problem with that. I think it makes a lot more sense. That's something, I guess I should ask, when you're, either let us know if you want us to do that now before the public comment period, or if that's something we can do as part of the public comment period and talk about, does that make any changes to the objective and shift it away from what we were intending? I can't think of any that would do that.
It sounds like it meets the intent.
I think
might get the comment from others.
Okay.
Whatever works for your system, for your process, I would be fine with.
Okay. I apologize, just a second. Let me note this. Okay. I have it noted. Thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, next one is 3E, which used to be 3H. I'll have to move the slide forward. Okay, so the old one was reduce congestion, everyone's favorite. And the new one is manage congestion to support land use goals and facility efficiency while avoiding unwanted induced demand. So this one has a lot to it, but it's short and sweet. The reality is we actually have a process in place that's called the congestion management process. It's a federal requirement because we are a TMA, 200,000 or greater MPO. So for us to say reduce congestion, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And it's better and more encompassing to say manage congestion and recognize that there may be areas where congestion is not something you can always completely eliminate in every way possible. And it helps move away from this idea of, okay, to solve congestion, we just need to put another lane on the highway. and really shows people that we're trying to think beyond that there are other options out there on how to manage congestion. We also wanted to talk about unwanted induced demand. So I hope I can explain this correctly. Unwanted or induced demand is basically you make an improvement to a transportation system or put in a new transportation system, and it entices people to come use that transportation system. What that does is, in certain cases, it can do things like increasing congestion. You're like, okay, we have a new lane on a roadway, that's cool, more people are going to use it. Well, as more and more and more people use it, you slowly build up back to being a congested facility or making it a congested facility. So what we want to do is when we think about putting these transportation projects, we identify, is there an impact that's going to happen, such as unwanted induced demand? And yes, there are instances of induced demand that are wanted, such as putting in a new transportation facility that's for non-motorized users. You want to encourage people to use it and induce that demand on that particular facility. Okay, no one's screaming at me. So any questions on that one? And please note, induced demand is part of our model. It's part of what we look at already, but it's better to call it out and be upfront about it. So next one. Okay, 3F, which used to be 3I, and they are unchanged. And I do not have it on there, I don't think. I apologize for that.
I think it's 3I.
Oh, yeah, I screwed up.
I think you had to say 3I.
Yeah, I screwed up. It should say 3F on the screen up there, not 3I. So basically, we're not recommending a change. It is reduce the passenger vehicle miles, VMT, and passenger vehicle hours travel per capita. So we're going to keep it the same between the 2040 and the 2050. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next one, 3G. Okay, so which is 3J from the 2040. The 2040 was increased competitiveness of transit. So when talking about this one, we were thinking, okay, maybe we need to be a little more clear on what we want here. You know, we need to refine this so people can understand what this really entails. And so we've shifted, or we've refined it to say, support the operation of safe and efficient scheduled transit services that minimize travel times and distances. So again, putting that emphasis on the importance of transit on our transportation system. You know, and building upon, when we looked at the 2040, we were really talking about how do we do the mode shift? You know, we did that model run about doing the mode shift of 5% off of single occupancy vehicle to any other mode besides single occupancy vehicle. One way you do it is you have objectives like this that really put the emphasis on a safe and efficient transit service throughout your transportation network. Any questions, comments? Okay. Next one is 3H, which used to be 3K in the 2040. 3K was improve year-round mobility. Again, a pretty generic statement or objective, so we wanted to refine that a little and talk about, well, what do we mean here? And say the new one is design and maintain multimodal facilities to accommodate winter mobility. When we as the project team talked about it, one of the things that we wanted to be more call out is this need to ensure that when we're designing transportation facilities, we account for the winter conditions that we have up here and how to maintain those facilities to keep them usable year round. And so that can be something we as AMATs can do, possibly through design efforts or working with other entities to help with things like winter maintenance, you know, more money for maintenance. But I want to be frank, we want to put this in there because we need to have an honest discussion about what this takes. Any questions? Yes.
More of a comment. As our vision is Winter City, when I heard the Winter City part, my mind, what it thought of is our primary design situation the winter with then what do we do in the summer, right? Versus designing for the summer and what do we do in the winter. It was just a little mindset shift that I had a little bit on that and how we think about facilities that we're recommending or designs that we're doing. Just, it's kind of the way that I thought about it. And is that kind of, I guess, in line with some of what this is saying?
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to get, is help with this shift away that, we do have a large portion of the year where we have winter conditions. So when we're designing a facility, that's kind of the primary thing we need to be looking at. Yeah. Any questions or comments? Okay. Next two really are old 2041s that we are recommending removal of. So the first one is 3L, improve incident clearance time. When we talked about this as part of our project team, we realized this is really hard for AMATS to directly impact. To sit there and say, okay, how can we help clear out an incident after it's happened? It's really dependent upon the troopers and APD. And we can be supportive by helping provide funding or ways to help clear it. But it was really hard for us to say, here's exactly how we can impact it. So we feel that our other goals and objectives help with this one, and we didn't need to call it out directly. Yes?
Was there anything from the study that Kenny did of incident response that was looked at or thought about?
Oh, like the ICM?
Yeah.
No, because because those were all project-specific things, so those will be things we can look at a later time. And that is just kind of part of it. When we had the we felt it was covered under the 2B1 about reducing barriers to timely emergency response. We felt that that was already part of it. And when we do things about efficiency of the transportation system, that kind of covers it, because we're saying, okay, how can we help to ensure that these non-reoccurring congestion incidents minimize their impact to the transportation system. Okay, next one. 3M, which was improve system reliability for all modes. We felt that our other goals and other objectives within this goal covered that in sufficient detail, and we figured it was one we can go ahead and remove. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, we'll wait. So there is another comment on there, but we'll go ahead and wait until after we go through everything and we can read through those. So, okay. Next one is goal 4. We're slowly getting through them, everyone. Hold on. Okay, goal 4 was support the economy in the 2040, and we're recommending it stay the same, as well as the goal itself. We are not recommending any changes. So it's develop a transportation system that supports a thriving, sustainable, broad-based economy. We felt that was broad enough to be able to encompass all of the objectives that we're recommending for that one. It didn't need any more specifics or tweaks to it. Any questions on that one? Okay. 4A. So this one, we had just some minor changes to this one. We added land use into it to help address the public comment we received on it, and we did some grammatical tweaking. So the old 4A was optimize the transportation system to meet the needs of the Port of Alaska, Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, the Alaska Railroad, the military bases, employment centers, and industrial and commercial areas, as well as enhancing intermodal capabilities. So the new one is enhance intermodal capabilities and optimize the transportation system. So kind of similar to what Brad said earlier, is putting the actions in the beginning so you know exactly what we're wanting to do. Enhance and optimize the transportation system to meet the needs of the Port of Alaska, Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, the Alaska Railroad, military bases, other employment centers, and industrial commercials, while maintaining compatibility with the land use plan. So again, that tying in with the land use. Any questions, comments? Okay. Next one, 4B. Okay, so the old 4B used to be enhanced travel and tourism. When we were talking about that, we there was another one that was kind of like broad. What do you mean? What is that supposed to do for the transportation system? So we actually took 4B and combined it with 5H, which is enhance aesthetics through transportation improvements consistent with community character. And we wanted to say, okay, you know, how can we help with tourism and just overall travel of the transportation system? So 4B is attract community investment and tourism through improved transportation system accessibility, aesthetics, and wayfinding. So we felt that this encompassed both those objectives and did a little bit better job at being more clear about what we meant. How do you improve travel, or how do you, especially tourism? You know, when somebody comes in from out of state, they need to be able to find their way through. And we also want to recognize that the communities and the individual neighborhoods within our overall community have their own kind of characteristics. And we've heard over the years that they want to be able to exemplify those characters, to really call them out and use them as a way to attract people to their neighborhood or make their neighborhood more enticing. Any questions on that? And I know I'm sure we're going to hear about it, but please remember that the MTP does include more than just federal funding. It also includes non-federal funding as options for our transportation system. So I guess I should say a good example of 4B is the Spinard Corridor project, the northern portion from Benson to Hillside, that had a lot of these things that we're talking about here about aesthetics and wayfinding. Okay, next one, 4C. We had a small tweak to this one. The old one was promote a dynamic transportation system that supports the local and regional economy and job growth. We actually refined it to say promote an adaptable transportation system that supports the local, regional economy and job growth. In recognition that we're always trying to do new ideas with the transportation system. We also want to be able to do things like adapt to resiliency, climate change, that kind of stuff. And so we felt adaptable was a better word for us to use than dynamic. Any questions on that one? Okay. 4D. So the old one was set policy and plan for new technologies such as autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. So this one, we made a slight adjustment to because it's recognizing that AMATs can't do this on their own. AMATs can't set policy that dictates what DOT and the municipality of Anchorage does. We can, however, set our own policies that govern AMATs and how we handle our funding or our projects. And then we can also help be facilitators with other groups to work on them adopting some kind of similar policy or the same policy. So a good example, complete streets, context-sensitive solutions. So something similar is what we're anticipating this objective to help cover, that we can plan for, but we also need help with the policies and make it a regional policy thing, not just an individual by neighborhood or community council or anything like that. Any questions? Okay, so 5H, we already talked about that it was combined with 4B, so we'll move on. The next one is 5I, which was changed and refined to 4E. So old 5I is match street design to the use and character of the community neighborhood through complete streets, recognizing that characters may vary from primarily commercial to primarily residential, and from primarily urban to primarily rural. When we talked about it, there was too much going on with this one. We wanted to kind of simplify it a little bit more and just be more direct what we're talking about here. So our new one is match street design to local land use goals by applying the context-sensitive solutions and complete street policies. So those are things that we already have in place and just calling those out more directly. Any questions on that one? Okay. Goal 5. So goal 5 under the 2040 used to say promote healthy or promote environmental sustainability. And it was in developing the transportation network, protect, preserve, and enhance the community's natural and built environment and quality of life, including the equity of all users and social justice while considering our northern climate and supporting planned land use patterns. This also was a goal that had a lot to it. And we did hear a couple of comments during the 2040 that by including the equity and social justice in here, it kind of gets lost amongst the environmental side of things. So even during the 2040, and we're doing it now, we're recommending a splitting out of the goals. So we have a goal 5, and then we have a new goal 6 that will include the equity side of things, whereas goal 5 is still focusing on the environment. So I'll talk about goal 6 here in a minute, but the goal 5 one, we've adjusted to say promote a healthy environment. Protect, preserve, and enhance the natural environment to promote sustainability and public health. So we have heard over the years that health is an important factor that we need to be talking about and considering in our transportation process. We do, in regards to air quality, think about it, but I think when we put this in here, we wanted to be more direct in calling it out. That health is an important part of our transportation system that we can actually affect in a positive way. And then we have sustainability, so we're talking about climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, things like that. So linking up with the climate action plan. Any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Wolfgang DOT. Since so much of the new infrastructure really more relies on the word resilience, is that anywhere included in this particular one or one of the other goals? Because I think you're talking about the same thing, you're just not using that word.
We do actually call resiliency in an objective, in a couple of objectives I'll talk about. So, okay, so really quickly, 5A, the old 5A, we are removing, or we're recommending moving to goal 6 because it deals with traditionally underserved populations, equity. So we'll talk about that as part of goal 6. Okay, so the new 5A, which used to be 5B, the 5B is preserve and improve air quality to maintain the health and welfare of citizens. So when we talked about this one, we recognized we needed to do a little shift because when we're talking about health and welfare of citizens, it was harder to explain what we meant there. So we decided to pull that health piece out and put it into a separate one, and then to use this one as an air quality one, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. So the new objective, 5A, is improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that links up with the climate change, or the climate action plan, as well as the intended infrastructure bill that's coming out, that I think they're voting on here tomorrow or today, because it does include whenever, sometime in the future they'll vote on it. Who knows when. But it does have a piece in there about greenhouse gas emission reduction. So we want to make sure we include it in. Please note that we're not very specific here. We're not saying reduce greenhouse gas emissions by X percentage by X date. That is a performance measure and target. Our goals and objectives, while some aspects can be specific, we don't want to be that specific because we want to be able to be inclusive in our performance measures and targets. So we'll get to that at another point. Any questions on 5A? Okay, next one, 5B, which used to be 5C. So the old one is reduce or mitigate stormwater impacts of surface transportation. We already do this as part of our transportation process, and we realized that it was much too narrowly focused, and so we wanted to expand it and say increase community resiliency to climate change impacts. So that is a much more broad objective. We felt that it was imperative for us to make it a little more broad to give us more room to work with our performance measures as well as our projects. And please note that we call out resiliency as was asked about there, but understand that a lot of our other objectives help us with this resiliency aspect, even if we don't directly call out resiliency itself. We're trying to, make sure that we're not so limited in our objectives to always using the kind of verbiage that we see in like the federal authorization bills and stuff. So just a heads up there. Next one, 5C, which was the old 5D. So the old one said, use coordinated transportation and land use planning techniques that support intermodal connections to reduce reliance on auto trips. So overall, we were pretty happy with this one. We just tweaked it a little to say coordinate transportation and land use planning to support intermodal connections that reduce reliance on auto trips and encourage active transportation. So it's linking it in with that health piece. You know, active transportation improvements is a direct way that we can help with health. You know, keeping a healthy environment, getting people to be healthy and promote health. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next one is 5E. We actually have used this one as, okay, is removed and is addressed as part of 3K. So we've already talked about this one. Next one, 5F. So 5F, we moved to goal 6 and refined it a little, so we'll talk about it there. Next one is 5D, which used to be 5G. 5G was minimize and mitigate impacts on the natural environment, such as water resources, fish and wildlife habitat, watersheds, and wetlands and parklands. So we felt this one was too prescriptive by listing out every possible thing that we would be impacting. And so we decided to kind of make it a more broad, as well as connect it to that context side of things. So the new one is support context-sensitive design. So context-sensitive solutions, complete streets, that kind of stuff. Standards in order to ensure transportation system compatibility with the natural environment. Any questions or comments on that one?
It looks like a 2 needs to be included in that. Just the typo.
For which one?
In order, ensure.
In order to ensure, okay. So that is under 5E. Okay. Okay, next ones, we have 5H. This one was moved to goal 4, and we've already talked about. The next one is 5I. It was moved to goal 4, and we already talked about it. Next one's a new one, but it kind of links up with everything else. It's promote a healthy lifestyle, promote healthy lifestyles through increased active transportation. So again, it's that health piece and trying to link us up to active transportation. Any questions or comments? Okay. Next one is goal 6. So this is the new goal. Prioritize equity is the new goal. So really quickly, I do want to make a correction here. Last meeting, when I was talking about the PIP and guiding principles and vision statement, I made the bonehead statement of saying that we don't understand equity in transportation. That's not what I meant to say. So I do want to apologize to the project team, the consultants, the sub-consultants, everyone who works on this project. I didn't mean to insinuate that we're dumb and we don't know what we're doing. So I apologize. What I should have said is I have a hard time eloquently talking about it out loud to people and making it to where people can understand what I mean. So with that in mind, as we move forward at talking about this prioritize equity, please bear with me. So equity is a really important thing. First, I want to get everyone on the same page because a lot of times people confuse equality with equity. And I'm going to use an awesome quote here I was given today, so it's a funny one. Equality is that everyone has shoes. Equity is that everyone's shoes fit. So what do we kind of mean in regards to the transportation system? It's making sure that when we're talking about things like improving access to employment, that there are traditionally underserved populations may need a little more effort on our part to make sure that they have equitable access to that employment opportunity, whether that's in additional investment or helping to reduce barriers. It's kind of an all-encompassing, and one size does not fit all in relation to our quote. So I think that our new goal is, one, very exciting and very important, because not only is it something that's talked about in federal literature and other places are doing it, but it is the right thing to do, is to make sure that we're thinking about this equity piece as we're moving forward in our MTP development, as well as our transportation planning process. Because equity is not limited to just this one particular goal. I'm sure you've heard me mention a couple of times now about equity, access, equal access, equitable access, sorry, not equal access. It's kind of interwoven in everything that we do. And it's a way for us to start bringing that in the forefront and, you know, have it in our mind as we are approaching something. So how do we do that? Well, first, the goal is promote equitable transportation options, improvements, and maintenance activities for vulnerable populations. Okay, so that's a lot. But first, vulnerable populations, we do actually have a definition for. I believe we put it in our memo. I want to make sure I get this right. But it is traditionally underserved populations, so minority populations, EJ populations. We do have the elderly included in there. We do have children included in there, and we do have persons with disabilities in there. So that is our definition that we have in there. It's a pretty standard definition that's used kind of throughout the transportation planning process. And that is something we can look at if we need to adjust. So any other questions or any questions at this point? Okay, so how do we go about this? Well, when you think about equity, you need to think about that it's kind of like a cost benefit thing that we need to look at, that there are benefits that the transportation system provides and there are costs associated with those benefits. And that we need to make sure that we're equitable in our approach of both. So the first objective we have is improve access to employment, education, recreation, and essential services for underserved neighborhoods. So we kind of already touched on this, Bart kind of already touched upon this. This is really equity of opportunities. So making sure that these traditionally underserved neighborhoods or populations have the same equitable opportunity for these essential services, employment and education. So it's just thinking about, okay, you know, we may need to do a little more to provide an equitable access of certain neighborhoods, so to like a park or to an employment center. You know, we may need to put more investment into those particular areas to get them up to the same level as other places. Hopefully I didn't just stick my foot in my mouth on that. So next one is, this used to be 2040 MTP 5F, and it is now 6B. So 5F, really quickly, was minimize adverse impacts on existing communities, such as neighborhood through traffic movements, speeding, noise, and light pollution. The new one is minimize and equitably distribute adverse impacts on existing neighborhoods resulting from transportation projects. So this is really getting us in the mind that when we look at impacts that come from transportation projects is how do they affect the neighborhoods in that area. And those impacts may negatively impact some neighborhoods, you know, traditionally underserved neighborhoods more than others. And that when we're focusing about distributing that impacts, that we look at, okay, maybe they're more impacted, so we may need to push it somewhere else that's less impacted. Please note that when we talk about impacts, we are not just talking about right-of-way impacts. We're talking about everything else that comes along with it. That includes cost to use the transportation system. So you put a new facility in, a new roadway in, what kind of cost is associated with that for people outside of the maintenance and the cost of the facility? It costs people to use a car to be able to access that facility. So thinking about that more, and how is that impacting these traditionally underserved populations? Because it may be more impactful to them than somebody who already has a car and who can afford that car. So,
Aaron?
Yes.
The prior one does have some specifics.
Yes.
Which is helpful as you read through it to understand kind of what it's getting at. Are those going to be captured somewhere else if they're not specifically called out?
So hold on, let me look at it just to make sure I understand. Oh, okay, so such as the neighborhood through traffic movement, speeding, noise, and light pollution. I don't know. I think what I need to do is talk with the project team and see if what we want to do about that. That's something we can look at either as a definition that talks about some examples of adverse impacts. What's really good about this one is it matches up to our TIP criteria pretty well, because we do talk about adverse impacts to EJ populations, and we do list kind of what those are. So maybe we can do something similar here and have some kind of definition or examples for people to look at.
Or even if it's in the TIP, then the language here is like, okay, it's the same as the TIP.
Yeah, so I'll see if there's something we can do.
I'm not saying it has to be included here. I'm just saying I don't want to lose those details.
Yeah, we don't, those specific ones are not called out in the TIP because I think we were trying to be more inclusive because they were a little limited. But I think what I'll do is I'll take a look at it and see if there's something else we can add either in the definition, either in the TIP or here. Okay, so any questions, comments on the 6B? Okay, next one, 6C. So again, it's the new one, reduce barriers to public participation by traditionally underrepresented groups. So this is something we have as part of our public participation plan. This is something we do, we strive for as part of everything we do, but it's another way to just be mindful of when we're doing plans such as the MTP or other plans that, we don't put up barriers ourselves, and we can help take down barriers that may already exist for traditionally underserved populations, to be able to provide them an equitable access and opportunity to participate in the public process. Any comments or questions? Sorry, I'm trying to hurry. Okay, last one we have is we are actually recommending removing the goal. So this used to be the MTP 2040 Goal 6 called Quality Decision Making. So our recommendation is to completely remove the goal and all objectives. So this is kind of already part of the federal process because a lot of it dealt with things like cost benefit, making sure that your capital expenditures are the best you can, be in line with your financial assumptions, all that kind of stuff. So we've already covered this. Additionally, a lot of them are already covered in everything that we have in the other objectives. So cost benefit is kind of a problem, is kind of our last thing. Cost benefit is a difficult thing to be able to equitably use. So our traditional cost benefit is, for example, cost AADT and length of the new facility. That predominantly favors one type of mode over others. And it's harder for us to be able to account for the non-monetized aspects of other projects. For example, non-motorized projects or active transportation projects bring a lot of benefits such as health. How do you capture that as part of a cost benefit analysis? At this point, we do not have the resources to be able to do that. It is something we are looking into. It's going to take time. We have looked at other examples. Oregon has a thing I've mentioned before called Mosaic. They spent, I think, a couple of years working with the community to come up with these kind of intrinsic qualities that exist in these other modes of travel and how best to capture them as part of your cost benefit analysis. So our recommendation for now is remove this goal and then still keep moving forward on developing a cost benefit analysis that can capture that equitable side of things. And then if we need to look at adding a goal with future MTPs, we can. But my plan for this is really incorporate this more as a policy level or action item for staff to move forward on. I didn't really want to go through every objective in there because they're all kind of relatively the same. But does anyone have any questions on that one? Okay. I guess I'll quickly go over what are the next steps for this. I apologize, it's a little hard to read. Next step for the goals and objectives, depending on how the policy committee goes. Our plan is to have a 30-day public comment period for the goals and objectives in December. At the same time, we're going to have a survey on the goals and objectives in December. So the same length as the public comment period. This gives people a lot of different options on how they can interact and provide their comments to us. In January, our intent at this point is based on what we heard from the public on the goals and objectives and any changes we want to make. We want to start developing our performance measures, targets, and project prioritization criteria. And then bring those for you guys to review and to release in February for a 30-day public comment period on those in March. Please be aware what we're intending right now is doing a work session in January to go over those performance measures, targets, and criteria. We're thinking sometime in the last couple of weeks of January or so, getting together with the TAC and policy committee, as well as the CAC if they would like to participate, and kind of walk through it, because those are going to be a lot more technical in their approach, and they tend to have a lot of discussion about, can we do this, can we do that? And we've had people ask us, when we do criteria, can you please provide scores on projects? So we want to be able to maybe take some of the 2040 MTP projects and score them, see how they compare. Just note that comparing scores between different MTPs with different criteria is often hard because they could potentially have changed in their criteria. So we'll do the best we can. Okay, that's all I had.
Matt Sidgwick has his hand up. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Aaron, sorry for catching this in retrospect, but I believe you said part of your overarching goal for safety was to increase attentiveness, and I'm not really sure how we as AMATs would go about doing that or even measuring it. And then I have a follow-up on 3D, which was to improve multimodal access. And it seems to me like that often directly conflicts with improving safety in conflicts with other transportation modes. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't say something to the effect of improve safety and security for all modes of access, or I'm sorry, all modes of transit. So back to safety, is it feasible for us to?
I guess I'm confused. Do you mean 2C?
Oh, well, I thought you had it as your overarching statement for safety is to increase attentiveness.
No, that is a specific portion of objective 2C.
Okay, pardon me. I guess my comment there is that sounds like a great goal for APD. I'm not sure how we as AMATs affect that.
Because we can do things like funding programs about awareness, distracted driving, stuff like that. That you know, and also attentiveness of people as they're walking or biking, as well as making sure that having things like reflective gear on. Those are options that we can do. It's not just project related, it's also program type of stuff.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And about, do you see any do you see the potential conflicts between improving multimodal access and the safety and reducing conflict goals? Because I mean, if I'm a biker, I would much rather take C Street with limited access than Lake Otis or Old Seward Highway with lots of crossings.
I mean, I guess I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Well, it seems to me like improving access points for multimodal access is in conflict with increasing safety and decreasing conflicts with other travel modes. I would be more advocating for dedicated multimodal transit options.
I mean, I don't see a conflict. I see them working hand in hand, because part of what you want to do is minimize the conflicts between them. So how do you do that while providing increased access? So
oh, you're talking about access through the transportation network as a whole. I'm thinking of access points.
Yeah, we're talking transport. Yeah, but I mean, that could include access points. So if you're talking about adding a driveway somewhere, you do need to be aware of the inherent safety concerns that come in with that driveway. And so we want to make sure that we're more, you know, that's something we talk about. That's something we discuss. If we put this driveway in here, what does that do to the users of the facility?
I see. I misinterpreted the term access. I was thinking of points of access to the existing transportation network. Sorry. And you're basically talking about access to those modes of travel,
Yes.
accessibility around town.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions from people? Yes.
Yeah, just one comment. Wolfgang on DOT. WashTO did a fairly holistic equity assessment for their Department of Transportation. And I sent that link to you, Craig. So you might review how they assessed equity within their transportation system and just cross-reference it with some of the goals and objectives that you've set and measurement standards. And I think there's a few things like homelessness they go a little more into the weeds on, but it just might help to just reinvent the mousetrap.
Okay.
Kind of look what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We did get another article that was sent around to staff today as well about equity and transportation and kind of what it means. So it's something we'll look at.
Right. So I mean, nationally, if you can align with other states and how they're interpreting equity as opposed to more of a myopic interpretation.
Okay.
Not that you're myopic.
I won't comment on that. Okay. I guess that was it from my side of things.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee? Whether in the room or online? And then also the public, I think we have a few comments that came through, right, Christine, from the public maybe?
Yeah, Nancy, your hand up, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, there's been a little bit of back and forth on my comments, but thank you for the chance to speak directly. I guess I would just mostly pick up on what one of your participants said with regard to the impacts under Goal 5. The person commenting talked about through traffic, speeding, noise, light pollution, etc. And in my comments, I talked about natural resource categories like water resources, habitat. And then in addition, there's Goal 7, which specifically, Goal 5C from the previous iteration called out stormwater. I understand that objectives and targets, objectives don't have to be numerical, that can be done in performance measures and targets, but objectives should be thorough in their categorization. And so I would urge the technical committee to retain some of the categories of environmental concerns, specifically 5C, which is stormwater, 5F, which talks about through traffic, speeding, noise, light pollution, and 5G, which talks about aspects of the natural environment, such as watersheds and parklands. That categorization gives the public knowledge that those will be called out, or standards will be looked at when performance measures and targets are developed. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments online? And so by making those comments, will that get included as part of the record or looked at, or how does that work?
Only if the committee includes it as part of its recommendation.
And so when it does go to public review, at that point, then there will be opportunity for those also to be addressed.
Yeah, they can bring their comments forward here. If the committee decides to act on them and say, please address these before you release them, and the policy committee approves that, that's what we would do. And or they can also comment during the public comment period, and we can address those then, put a comment response summary and address it then.
How about some of the comments that we've made today? How do those get counted?
I would also ask if you are wanting changes made, please include that as part of your motion, so we can have it on the record, and it's easier for us to backtrace. Well, how did this come out, and why did it come out? Because if we go to the policy committee and they're like, why are you recommending this change? And I'm like, well, the TSC kind of talked about it. Somebody would be like, did they vote on it? So I would appreciate if you could include it in the motion if you would like it changed.
Okay, sounds good. Michelle?
Sorry, can we go back? And just on the target thing, I guess, I appreciate where the public is coming from about targets. I guess I would just, a lot of times measuring targets takes a lot of staff resources. And that, so one thing is we, first of all, need to establish baselines, need to establish the program for which those measures are actually documented and measured. So I would also just caution saying, like, right out of the gate, we're gonna have these metrics that we need to be able to measure. I think we need to first take a step in saying we want to start measuring these things, because for some departments, they may not have the resources, and it may take a budget change, which could take, you know, you don't just get to do that because something came up. So these things need to be thoughtfully integrated and thought about. So I just caution us when we start taking targets that we think about the impacts of that.
Thank you. I agree. Other comments from committee or public? One question that I have is, in our motion, can we request that the comments that have been made be the start of a comment response table or something to that effect that can be looked at and integrated in? Not necessarily that it's adopted or incorporated at this point, but that it is on the record and will get looked at.
Craig, I don't know how you want to handle it. So
However
just
you want
like,
to do it. If you want to
yeah,
make sure that all the comments that were discussed today and the ones that are in the chat, just make the motion, I guess. Know that we only have 2 weeks before the policy committee. I mean, if you want them to be included in what's being posted, so.
Any thoughts from the committee on whether these extra comments that have been made should get put before the policy committee in that 2-week period?
I guess the question, won't they also be able to make these comments at a later time?
yeah, they'll be able to make them during the public comment period. Just so you guys know, our plan is have the public comment period, take whatever we get from the public, update the goals and objectives where we can, and then move forward. So our plan is not to bring them back to the committees again. And you'll see them again. Don't worry, you'll see them again when we do the performance measures and target. And if there are any substantial changes, we of course give everyone a heads up as to what's going on with that. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to pre-understand. You know, we could get big comments during the comment period and make huge changes, and then we adjust our schedule as is. But yes, there's other opportunities. They can do it during the survey, or they can do it during submitting email comments during the 30-day public comment period.
I think just from my perspective, I feel more comfortable doing that because we're hearing the comments we haven't as a committee been able to speak to those and really have formulated a response. It feels more appropriate. I think right now you're just trying to get us to recommend for approval the goals that you put before us. It seems more appropriate given the time frame between the policy committee, this meeting and the policy committee. And I know that we'll be able to have ample time to actually hear those comments and respond to them in a very thoughtful manner versus just here, take these for consideration, because we actually have to wrap our heads around them. And I think not just in raw form give those comments to the policy committee, but what do we think about those comments? I don't think we have the time to do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my thought too, is as we talked about the public involvement plan, one of the things that we had said with the short public comment period was if they can come talk to us at the TAC and they'll see it now. And so I guess asking duplicative effort is not as ideal as just saying any comments that have been made today, let's have those ready. They don't necessarily need to get changed before the policy committee. They don't necessarily need to be reviewed by the policy committee, but can we incorporate that in so that they're part of the public review? Or so when you do get all the public comments from the public review period, things said today, can they get incorporated and added to that?
I mean, I don't see why not. I think that would be my preferred option, is incorporate them as part of the public comment period. So we at least have them there so people can see, so we can see them and they're captured. I mean, if you want to make the changes recommended now, I mean, either way works for me, so I'm trying to be helpful and open and honest. Whatever you guys want to do, we can work with it.
So it wouldn't be against rules of order to request that all the comments provided today be included as the public part of the start of the public comment period. That would be something we could do.
Whatever you want to do.
I think we asked for clarification in many instances, but if you have a specific request, it probably make sense to formulate it formally as a comment or for response.
Yeah. I guess in that case, we probably want to list all of them that were made, which could be a little bit more challenging. Maybe what I'll do is just when we have the notes, we could go through and see all the comments that were made from the minutes. And when the public comment period opens, we can just kind of, at that point, take them and enter them into the public comment period. And we're not trying to do that right now. So.
I feel more comfortable with that.
I was going to say, you could make a motion to say that comments received in this chat right here are included as part of the public comments. You could also say, we agree with that one, we don't agree with this one, but it's probably just easier to just say every comment that's there, that's part of the public comment period, or part of the public comments. So.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
There's just one more chat that came in, so I will read it for the record. And from Nancy, I encourage the TAC to suggest any substantial changes now. AMETS intends to start right on the performance standards and criteria in January 2022, right after the public comment period closes. It seems as if TAC should take a second look, but that it isn't in the schedule.
Okay. Sounds good. So, any other comments or questions? Looks like good. What is the will of the committee?
This is Matt Stichik. I would move that we accept the base presentation of revised goals to recommend to the policy committee and submit any recommendations during the formal public review process.
Okay, moved by Mr. Stichik. You want some clarification here?
I apologize. I need some clarification. Do you mean approve to release it for a 30-day public comment period? That's what we're asking.
You're correct. I'm sorry, Aaron. Yes, I move that we release recommend that the policy committee release for public comment, suggest 30-day public comment period, the proposed goals and objectives, and without
include all the
changes today.
Include the comments received today as part of the public comment period.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Citrix, seconded by Mr. Van Hove. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved.
I'm very sorry for the presentations after me, and I tried as best I could to go.
You know, this is critical stuff, and I think you did a fantastic job of simplifying and refining and revising. So kudos to the project team, and thank you for the presentation. And I think everyone else here, I hope, benefited from all of that information as well. So thank you. Don't feel too bad.
And if you're doing comment and response as TAC response, you can just say Matt Stichik was confused.
Okay, are there any other action items?
No, sir.
Okay, so moving on to the project and plan updates. Are there any of those?
I think we're all covering them all under general info. It can be either place, so sort of.
Okay, we'll move on to the general information then. Item A, Northern Lights Boulevard, Minnesota Drive to Stewart Highway projects. And I'll turn
that guy,
over.
Mr. Baskey.
Looks like Sean Baskey is going to be presenting.
This
Go
time,
ahead.
Dance.
Yeah, so Sean Baskey, project manager for the Department of Transportation. Imagine an elaborate presentation that lasts 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll shorten it down to like 4 or 5 real quick. So with me, I've also got Travis Holmes, who's the project engineer with the Department of Transportation, basically running things for me, and then Dave Gamez, who's the project manager for Lounsbury, who's designing the project. So quickly, we'll just run through some things. This is Northern Lights, Minnesota to Seward Highway, and it's all about sidewalks and pathways and trying to improve things for active transportation. Just a quick thing on schedule. We started in spring 2021. We're working through the environmental document and preliminary design right now, trying to get the best bang for the buck approach. Just doing very cursory reviews of things right now. Final design will be here over the next couple of years, and then hopefully in 2023, we will get into construction. The reason we're here today is because when Travis and I received this project a little bit ago, the main concern was trying to manage expectations with the funding that we had in place and not overpromise and underdeliver. And so the main thing was we're going to go out and take a look at all of the facilities, understand the problem that's out there, and then come back and, you know, try to size the project accordingly with the money that we've got. So there's $800,000 in the nomination for construction funding on the project, which is not a lot to do all the things that are out there. So anybody that's driven down Northern Lights knows that it is a very difficult space to go through. It was originally constructed in 1975, 45-foot wide sidewalks. I'll let the following slides here do it justice, and we'll slide through some things. We've got driveway problems, we've got sidewalk problems, and obviously utilities are in the space as well. So what we're gonna do is show an overall graphic. So we sent out our design team to go and look at the space. And basically, starting from the west end, if you start looking at what's going on the roadway, yellow or that orange is basically non-ADA compliant sidewalks. So just on this screen alone, you can see that we're not ADA compliant for a majority of it. If you look at all of the cyan or the blue dots, those are all non-ADA compliant driveways. And then anytime you see a utility symbol, that is a utility that is either in the ADA space, something that needs to be fixed, and those are obviously expensive things to have to adjust. So if we slide down the entire corridor, you'll see that we've got lots of problems along the entire corridor.
Where are the green dots?
So the green dots are potential opportunities for addressing access control. Some of these are driveways that aren't leading to actual parking lots or other things. Some of them have, at least in one instance, where a property has 7 accesses onto adjacent roadways on one side or another, and may not need 7 accesses to do so. But as soon as we engage in something like that, that will eat time and money and bog us down. We're more than happy to engage in that, but it obviously has impacts. If we slide through here, we can continue to see the same problems prevalent throughout the corridor, some areas better than others. Utility, electric line poles, creating conflicts throughout the space. Luminaires lighting the roadway in the space. And eventually we get to the end of the project. So As you can imagine, fixing all of that would be really expensive. So, you can imagine the improvements that we would have to make to do things there, reconstruct portions of the sidewalks and pathways, reconstruct driveways, requires us to go back onto private property, flatten things out back into the space, potentially modifying their parking and a bunch of other things. Very involved for certainly some improvements to the overall non-motorized space along Northern Lights. Okay, here's the dollar cost. And we just started summarizing things because, you know, it becomes apparent very quickly that things are too expensive for the $800,000 in construction that are allocated to the project currently. We can address portions of the project. We can not address the entire problem. And these are very preliminary planning level estimates, making huge assumptions. So those planning level estimates could be 50% off, they could be 100% off. These are rough order of magnitude costs. So I cannot, I'll tell you right now, I cannot deliver a project, $1.7 million, that will address both the north and south side of that project, just doing sidewalk repairs. It's going to be more or less in certain spaces, but the rough order of magnitude is that we're spending 2 to 3 times the budget that is shown in the TIF to even just address sidewalks. So that's why we're here today, is to talk about the reality of the project and what we can, and maybe we're seeking some comments from the committee on what it is that they would like to see. Open for discussion.
Could you go back to one slide?
Absolutely. More than happy. The project team is more than willing to make decisions on our own on valuing things, but certainly getting input is important. Sorry
if you said it, but when you say just repair the south side sidewalks or repair the north side, is it like as is and not making them compliant? What does that mean?
So it would be, let's just say the cross slopes are more than 2%. So it would be bringing them into compliance from, you know, a cross slope perspective,
Gotcha.
Right? Not widening them. We're not talking about widening, you know, these 5-foot sidewalks to 6-foot sidewalks or 8-foot, none of that, right? I mean, we're not talking about a separated facility or anything. It's placing it in place and trying to fix cracks and things that make them non-ADA compliant.
So you still have a lot of colors on that map that you showed us with the different non-compliant.
Right, so the orange would be removed from being orange.
Okay, cool.
Bart, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if you're going to be touching the bus stops on the north side. They would have to be ADA compliant, meaning 5 by 8 right-of-way would be probably a big concern. Does that $1 million include the additional right-of-way that you would need to make those 5 by 8 bus stops?
Nope. Certainly, that's another aspect of the project that we can include. It carries its own dollar amount for sure.
Another question that I had is curb ramps, ADA compliant curb ramps. If you touch one in the intersection, you usually have to touch more in the intersection.
Sure. So with the most recent Northern Lights pavement preservation project that went through and reconstructed all of the curb ramps, a couple of them have little minor things that need to be fixed, but largely we'd say that they're all compliant.
And so repair doesn't mean that you leave alone things that.
Correct. Yes. We're trying to get the best bang for our buck, targeting specifically issues. So you might have a new stretch of sidewalk right next to existing sidewalks that have been there for many decades.
How come there's not an ADA compliant just north side option?
So that could be, we could list out probably 15 or 20 different alternatives. This is an example of things, right? So we could mix and match on this slide, you know,
Gotcha.
100 different ways.
I didn't know if there was just, so, because Barton mentioned the bus stops on the north side, so I
Sure.
guess in looking at, I like the idea of doing just one side
Right.
and doing the whole thing. But I'd like it to be the side that maybe has the most like bus stops or things that maybe they're scattered across on both sides, I don't know, assuming they are.
Sure. So the easiest side or the least expensive side to make completely ADA compliant would be the south side.
Okay, thank you.
I think I missed it. Had you talked about what the purpose and need and what the project is trying to accomplish?
Sure. There's not a lot of definition in the tip for scope on any of these projects, but what we imagine it to be is to try to address non-compliance in the overall space. I'm sure that when somebody came up with the nomination, they could have had a vision of having separated facilities, you know, all kinds of great things. I think there's other tip projects that are in there to try to do other things to no limits, which this project is not.
Do we have any other online comments?
There's a hand. Bart, do you have something else to say?
No.
Okay, we don't make any action items, right? It's just, that's a presentation. That is super helpful. Thanks for helping us to understand.
Manage expectations.
Yes, that is the buzzword on this one. Thank you so much. Okay. We'll move to item B, 7B, Chugach Way study. Yeah.
I don't know, is it, I think Laquita's online, but is you Katie or Laquita? Okay, Laquita's online.
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Laquita Chmielowski. I'm the Land Use Planning Manager here at Dow, and I'm leading the Chugach Way Area Transportation Element Study with other folks here at Dow and also with CRW. And I'm here today to just give you an update on what we've been doing and show you some cross-section alternatives that we're currently evaluating and get your input. So at the beginning of the project, we came up with a project vision. It was to identify roadway improvements that would support opportunities for redevelopment with an emphasis on safety and multimodal facilities in the area. And that has been our guiding principle throughout this project. And so just a little reminder of the study area for this project. It's from Minnesota and Spenard to the west, Arctic to the east, 40th to the south, and 36th Avenue to the north. So I think the last time we came and chatted with all of you, we were in the midst of doing the existing conditions summary report, which was really gathering all the information that was available as far as traffic data, studies that had been done, and putting that in one report to kind of gather everything in one place. And then we've also been engaging the stakeholders, and we have kind of two separate stakeholder groups. One of them is the institutional stakeholders, which is agencies, larger property owners in the area, as well as utilities. And then we have the residential stakeholders, which are, of course, everyone else who lives in the area, and we've been engaging them through the Spenard Community Council. And we sent out a survey last month to get input on some of the goals and options that are feature options that we've been talking about. And really what we heard from that survey is that people want to see connectivity, greater connectivity, whether it's vehicles or pedestrians and multimodal in general. And so with all that information that we've gathered, we started to put together different cross sections that might be feasible along Chugach Way. And so I'm going to quickly run through these. And so the first one is what we're calling bicyclist paradise. And so this is a cross-section that provides 10-foot travel lanes for vehicles, bike lanes on either side, and then separated or sidewalks on either side for pedestrians. So the advantages of this one is, of course, you've got your bicycle lanes. It's very easy to maintain in the wintertime. There's area for snow storage. It has separated use areas for the sidewalks and pedestrians that are walking. Some of the disadvantages is that it is a wider cross section, and the existing right-of-way along Chugach Street is 30 to 45 feet. And this one is probably our largest cross section at 43 feet. And then also, one of the things we heard a lot from stakeholders is they want folks to drive slowly through this area. And with the bicycle lane, it gives you a wider cross section, which sometimes gives drivers the sense that they can go faster, especially in the winter months when those stripes, bicycle lane striping isn't as visible. The next cross section is what we're calling pedestrian oasis. So on this one, we don't have those separated bicycle lanes, but we do have a wider sidewalk on either side. Again, trying to provide some buffering for the pedestrians as well as potentially snow storage in the winter. And although we don't have a bicycle lane designated on this particular alternative, this area could be designated a bicycle boulevard and signed accordingly. Then we have multimodal love, and this cross section has a 12-foot wide multi-use trail on one side and then a 5-foot sidewalk on the other. And so the idea was to maybe bring back in an element where you could have bicyclists, a facility for bicyclists and other users using that multi-use pathway, but then having the sidewalk for pedestrians. And this is probably, although it takes a little bit more right-of-way than our previous alternative, it doesn't need as much right-of-way as the one with the bicycle lanes. And then we have what we're calling worn-off wandering, which is kind of a new concept, at least for Anchorage. And it's where everybody shares the space. So the vehicles and the pedestrians and the bicyclists all share the same space. And based on our code, this cross section could only be used for about a 500-foot section. So right now we're showing this to be between Cope Street and Indiana Street. And the idea behind this is that it provides the opportunity for some placemaking and a sense of community. The street could be activated in different ways. And then also with the worn-off wandering, there are ways to build in amenities like we've shown here, where you have placements of benches and planters to create chicane. So it helps to provide some traffic calming to keep people moving slowly through this area. And then, of course, beyond these streets, we would transition to probably one of the other alternatives that we're evaluating. And then lastly, we're looking at what we're calling moving motors, which is just looking at changing the classification of the roadway from a local street to a neighborhood collector. And some of the reasons that we considered this is because we have some development within the area that's ongoing or coming, which because Cook Inlet Housing is currently developing their parcels at the corner of Spinard and Chugach Way. And then JJ Brooks owns a large chunk of property at the other end of Chugach Way, which he had rezoned this year and is prepping for, over 300 housing units. I think the drawback for this alternative is that based on what from the stakeholders, changing the classification to a collector and having a collector cross section doesn't really meet the goals that they have in mind for that area. And then other things that we're looking at that can be used in any of the alternatives is traffic calming, providing connectivity throughout the project area, where we can provide amenities and placemaking opportunities such as gateways, and then just other opportunities such as are there places where it makes sense to provide some snow storage or on-street parking. And so we finished up these, alternatives, and now we're going to start screening them. And we kind of have put them into these 3 categories. So there's priority, so that to be able to move on in the screening process, they need to meet both the priority screening criteria, and then feasibility is the next category. So emergency access, what are the right-of-way impacts, utility infrastructure, and then the last category is just additional considerations. So how easily can these be, how easily can the alternatives incorporate connectivity throughout the project area and beyond? And then, of course, vehicular access. There's quite a few driveways and developments already along the corridor. And then, of course, some of the other things we talked about, parking capacity and other amenities. So we are continuing to move through our process and coordinate with stakeholders to finalize the alternatives and then come up with the preferred alternative. And our goal is to be finished with this project at the end of December. And at the end of the project, we will have either a preferred alternative or identify alternatives that can be then moved forward to design and construction when funding becomes available. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from committee? Anyone online? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Lakita.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7C, Title 21 Parking Amendment, public release draft.
Last but not least, I believe Tom Davis and or Elizabeth Appleby from the current planning group should be online. Hopefully a quick.
Given that we've got 7 minutes.
Do we need to do we have 7 minutes, so they said quick 5 minutes. They're on.
Yep, go ahead and take the screen over. Tom?
This is Tom Davis.
All right, ready to go, Tom.
Okay, great, thank you. We are just returning to the TAC to report on that we have released a community discussion draft of an item that we reported to the TAC on in March and then again in June. And we are here to just briefly go over the changes of that, and I'll just quickly share the project webpage. This is a draft change to the city's off-street parking requirements and driveway requirements. It interacts with multiple goals and objectives in the 2040 MTP, now soon to be 2050 MTP, as well as the 2010 bike plan to be changed to the non-motorized transportation plan. So I will just go ahead and turn over this update to Elizabeth.
Hi everyone, I'm gonna steal the screen share here from Tom.
We've got about 2 minutes. I'm sorry we got so short on time.
Okay, I will be brief. So Tom had showed pulled up the website. So we've got several documents posted. I just wanted to show quickly the annotated draft and then the clean version. And maybe I'll just flash 1 or 2 slides from this project information summary. So this is the annotated draft. So if there's a specific area that you're interested in, these are on the beginning pages of the annotated code amendment. And so you can find what you're looking for, and there's a page number. And then if you look here, there's an explanation for the rationale behind the change and what we're doing. And then it shows deleted text and added text. And then we also have this clean version that's not as lengthy, and it just shows the final text that we're proposing. Again, we're at the community discussion draft phase. We would ideally like comments on this by December 17th, or just keep in mind before Christmas. There'll be continued opportunity for input as this will be going to public hearings in early 2022. And then just quickly, I'll pull up the project summary sheet. So this is attachment 1. I think I have time to show just a few slides, but I won't go over everything. I think it projected in my other window, which I might just do without at this point in time. Well, it's in the, let's switch it. All right, I'll give up trying to fix it. But this is the project summary sheet. If you just want to look at this to get an idea of the main changes. This slide shows we're here at step 2. It has our contact information, ways to get to the website for that information. This page shows the summary of our major proposals. We have 6. And then these pages here go into more detail on each one. So some of the highlights are we're looking to streamline approvals for administrative parking reductions, give a more complete menu of available parking reductions by adding some or modifying some. We're looking to replace the 5 existing area-specific administrative parking reductions with instead a lower minimum by right parking requirement. This again would be in neighborhoods near downtown and along transit corridors in the Anchorage Bowl. The changes will improve site access for pedestrians, bicyclists, rideshare, public transit. 5 and 6, 5 talks about residential access and driveway circulation. It would apply mostly to multifamily units where in not all areas they would be required to have this huge turnaround that sometimes makes the whole site turn into driveway in an urban context. And 6, allow smaller dimensions of parking spaces and aisles for certain uses within the urban context. So looking here, we can see our proposed maps. We have existing and then what's proposed. There's some information for the rationale of how we got here with our pre-consultation phase. And I won't go through every slide, but this just goes into some of the things that we're proposing. And again, this is all on the website. What I was showing in the PowerPoint is just attachment 1. There's a cover memo, about 3 pages of text summarizing things. So these are good documents for summary. And then 2 and 3 if you want to dive into the details of the code. Thanks for having Tom and me here today. Feel free to reach out with questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for running through that quickly. That was a great job. We'll look at the website and let you know if we have any questions.
And one last thing to the right, you can see we have our public information sessions on November 16th. Option to join at noon or 6:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you so much. Any comments on that? Questions? I don't see any, so I'm going to move over quickly to committee comments. Got just a minute. Anything to bring forward from the committee? One thing I'll say is we do have new driveway standards. So that got published just the other day. If you have questions, let me know. NOA driveway standards. Any public comments? Okay, with that, we're going to adjourn at 4:29, just in time. Thank you, everyone.